I mean, and it's really, I have so many
My house on the south, on the west side, gets a lot of sun there, and for some reason those, I mean, I don't remember them coming up in February, especially. But they are.
So,
Oh, yeah.
we have a lot of those.
I think I remember seeing those, but they don't come up to me ready to
Well, it's not.
Oh,
That's true. I'm not very early.
yeah.
So,
Family name. What's your? 412
right. So it's one of the reasons down here. Yeah. These little Irish are in our woods, right on the south side of the house. Gets there.
Yeah.
It's like a dedicated historic building.
The other weird thing right now is that I'm getting a few,
Because it's another organization that's been around.
outside my house, like showing up, like on my computer one day, or.
And all this art people have made.
I mean, it's
Have you ever
not.
had them?
National League
I have a teeny tiny one.
So it's a membership.
They're big black ones.
Writers, art.
Well, you know, my basement
And I
is
think
a
it's
cellar,
been
and there
kind
is
of broad
some wood in there, but it's all been
Playwrights, things like that.
insulated, not
Great.
insulated and weatherproof.
But yeah, it's
I don't know where the heck they're coming from.
Okay, so you want to get rid of them?
I'm a little attracted.
They're located.
Here is that.
It once went up there, like, it's like the first writer kind of thing. They have an art and performance
You
night
say,
there, just like for
like a bottle
the
cap.
public. Yeah, so the building's open then.
Yeah.
But
And you
we're
mix
part of also like
dry boric acid.
national level of
And
his
you
chapters
just mix it all
all over the
together.
country.
It's very
So we're
white.
part of the
And
Central
they
Dark
draw it.
Organization.
Oh, yeah, that's granular,
Yeah.
because there are two different things that they like, really sweet
Like last
stuff.
spring
Yeah.
was.
But then for the stuff and just the boric acid,
That's what,
okay, and when they bring it back,
They bring it back.
yeah. I'll say I'll try that too, but they seem to be
We picked out.
disappearing, or they don't get back to their nest, and I see them pulled up at the dead. I mean, I can do it on two hands, how many I've seen in various weird places.
Oh, yeah.
I have no idea.
But go get her.
What are they gonna do? Are they gonna, is my house gonna fall down?
Probably not.
Probably not, I just don't like them.
It's just
No, not-
a little electrified, so I think that. So every other people drift in.
Or on my headboard, on my bed, just one. So I have to do things in various places in the house.
Well, I found that the boric acid work.
Where did you work after that?
Yeah, drugstore. Yeah. That worked better for the, yeah, sweet value.
I feel the breeze going through the whole Margo. I feel the fan.
Oh, there's a fan on.
Because I was feeling it too. Is it too much? It's too much, yeah. Then we need not have the fan. I'll put in the fan. Make sure I put out my
The left side.
I'm not the cheese side alone.
You're on the left.
Oh my gosh. We love you too, and she knows about the food, this one.
Would you like me to close that door, or is it fine if I leave it open?
Okay, that's fine. I'm just double checking that we're working here. Make sure that we're good. And then we can get started.
Do you want me to wait for a minute? Tell me when you.
Yeah, I'm just,
I don't want to be the first one.
that's okay. Let's see here.
But there will be noise.
Yeah, you should
We need to close that. I'll do that right now. Thank you for reminding me. There's a sign too. I'll ask Kathy if that locks it.
I bet it doesn't.
It sounds like it. They probably unlock it at first. Yeah. American is fine. Is it signed or should I, it doesn't lock the door? Can you close it? I know her sign is closed. Yes.
Okay.
I thought eventually something like this. No, this was just on my computer using a audio editing program.
All right, Carolyn, let me just stick this microphone on you. Okay. Just say something real quickly.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing. I can talk louder than that if needed.
No, I think you're good.
We'll be beginning as soon as
Okay.
it gets us started.
But yeah, I don't put any reverb.
And what kind of mic?
I'm using it's called an ER. Do you? And I use it because I don't have a real insulated booth. It cuts out a lot of other extra sound, but it doesn't have the highest these dry.
What?
That it really uses.
Did you pray? Did you sing? There you go.
Okay, I think we're ready to rock and roll. Okay. Right on time.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Gabby. I work on the event side of things, so if you wanted to host an event, you would probably talk to me. I'm so happy to welcome you to Buffalo Street Books. Ithaca's non-profit independent bookstore. Our purpose is to reimagine the ways an indie bookstore can serve its community, and despite the odds, we do that every day. Events like these are a big part of that. We produce between 100 to 150 programs every year, which is a lot. We also currently curate this indie bookstore to meet the needs of our community. If that's something you value, please consider becoming a member. You can find more information about that at the front register. We are so excited to have author, journalist, and Zen practitioner, Lee Carlson, a former magazine editor and documentary producer. His work has appeared in Outside, the Los Angeles Times, and multiple Time Inc. publications. A longtime student of Peter Matthiessen, Carlson's upcoming book, A Single Event Tonight, that explores his relationship and Mathiessen's legacy. Lee will be joined in conversation by Carolyn Clark. Carolyn Clark was born and raised in Ithaca, New York, but periodically lived abroad in Italy, Switzerland, and France. At Cornell, she studied poetry with Archie Emmons, earned a BA in classical civilization, and later completed her MA and PhD in classics. While raising a family in Montgomery County, Maryland, she spent 15 years teaching classics related courses, Latin, French, mythology for writers. She now enjoys living with her husband and writing in the theater. So without further ado, let's welcome Lee and Carolyn.
Thank you. If you'll just excuse me for 2 seconds, my technical person tells me that somebody far away, around far away, so I just want to fix this here. So while we're waiting, I'll just tell you. And we'll try this.
We're not everywhere or far away saying that at the same time.
Yeah, so.
One person having technical difficulties.
Yeah, and the StreamYard, it goes out, the whole point using the StreamYard instead of like just Facebook streaming is that when it goes out, it's supposedly when it sends out to like Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, so different people on different platforms can get it. But we'll see what happens. Hopefully it'll work. And if it doesn't, we're going to have a nice conversation. Either way. So, anyway. All right. Hi.
Hi. Let's have a conversation.
This is why Carol and I are both writers. We're not video producers or, miracles of modern technology. So, anyway.
Well, anyway, I'm really glad we're here at Buffalo Street Books, and I thank them over and over for the incredible staff effort they have putting the here and now in our hands. And I just have had lots of great experiences with readings here of my own. Even my mother and I had a reading here, and it's a home base for me. And I really appreciate you guys coming in on a super sunny Ithaca day. It is really sunny out there for a change.
On a Friday at 5, not going to happy hour or anything like that.
So I'm just really excited to be participating as the person to ask a few questions and to be able to ask, the who, what, where, when, and why, how much and how many in Japanese as well, because I'm planning a trip to Japan to visit an old friend there, and she says, these are the questions you need to know. So here we go. I'm going to ask you the doko question, which is where? Where do you situate most of your book in place?
Sure. So the background, not to correct Gabby, but the writer's name is Peter Matthiessen, and he is the only person ever in history to win the National Book Award for both fiction and nonfiction. When he died, his obituary was on the front page of the New York Times because he was such a well-known writer, and they don't do that very often. Usually that's reserved for presidents and people like that. But he was also known, not as well, but he was known as being a Zen Master. He had spent a lot of time in Japan studying. He spent time with Japanese Zen Masters that came to the U.S. And he lived in the Hamptons. He moved to the Hamptons before it was the Hamptons, back in the late 50s, I think. And a lot of writers and artists were moving there just because it was a beautiful place and land was cheap and not like anyone. And so I found myself living about an hour away from him. And he had taken an old horse barn, an old two-stall horse barn on his property, and he had rebuilt it with the help of some of his students into what's called a Zendo, which is a Zen meditation center. And that's where a lot of the action in this book takes place.
That's exactly what I was hoping to hear. I understand it's still in the process of becoming a revitalized center. And thanks to your fundraising in the past, and there's still a future path for it, I hope that you'll keep us posted about that.
Thank you. Yes, when he died, which is now about 10 years ago, because he had bought the property for $28,000, and it was now worth like $3 million, his family had to sell it for the capital gains taxes, and because it's right smack in the middle of the Hamptons. And we just thought that was the end of it, and it was really sad, because not only it had three main buildings on it. It had his main house, which was sort of like a Cape Cod style old low sheeted shingle, and then he had this horse barn that he turned into his Zendo, and then he also had a separate building that was his writing studio, where at one point it was just like a single room building that some rumors were that it was an Indian schoolhouse. I'm not sure that was really true, but anyway, and so we had a few acres, and we were sad to see it go. We thought somebody would make mention of it, and a few years later, nothing had been done with the property. So I started, I was drive out on occasion just to see when the bulldozers were going to take everything down. And we never did. So I got in touch with some people at me, and it turned out the guy that bought it was so wealthy. He had bought 3 different properties in the Hamptons because he couldn't decide where he wanted to build his new house. And, each property with $3 million or whatever. And he never built somewhere else. And so we thought, well, maybe we can convince this guy to do the right thing, and he can donate it back to us or sell it back to us at a lower price and take a write-off or whatever. And we worked really hard for a couple of years, and he said he would do it. He signed the letter of intent. We raised the money. We raised $11 million. And at the last minute, we backed up. So the property is still sitting there. We are still hopeful. We are still trying, because we think that Peter's legacy was that he was a Zen master. He was an amazing writer. He wrote a lot about the natural world. He was a social activist. And he was just one of those people that this intersection of everything that he cared about was really a unique intersection. And we thought it would be nice to keep his not just his memory alive, but his teachings moving forward. And especially in the world today, we need the intersection of compassion and ecology and that sort of thing. And so we still are hopeful and working on that, but we also are doing some other things to bring in speakers into the Hamptons. It's like, go to the islands done sometimes, trying to go against the rampant materialism there, but we're doing our best. And this book is part of that. I just thought, I want to bring his teachings to a wide audience and talk about what I learned from this amazing man, and hopefully bring his amazing teachings to other people. So,
Thank you so much. And I know that a lot of your book doesn't mention those details, so thank you very much, because it is really important to see how it ties in with a reality, a physical reality that has a potential future. And your dedication, and the reason I knew I wanted to meet with you, is that you have a friend who also lives there, Scott, who is also involved in that board and trying to work things out for the future. There are many others also. So we have mutual friends in common. And I always was very influenced by Peter Mathiessen's Snow Leopard, having received it from my best friend, Pindy Stephen, years ago when I was in Rome, Italy. I read the book voraciously and then promptly went off to the mountains and never come back, sort of thing. But really, the mountains and the beauty of everything he touched on in his literature was very effective for people who were nature lovers, if you will, as well as people seeking solitude in their own lives and finding ways to carve that out at various times in one's life. And that's your gift. I mean, what you've done for this book has been remarkable, because you have a glossary of terms in the back, and fascinatingly, just reading the book, I was able to give myself a self-test, and I could remember at least half the terms, which is remarkable. So I think really your learning experience as a reader is what is fascinating here. As I point out, I don't have much background in this, but I do have a passion for the universality of meditation and contemplation, and poetry is one aspect of that, as well as yoga and other things that we do, even skiing, which we have in common, both downhill and across country, backcountry. So I want to say thank you for telling me now the why, the nausea is kind of explained there too, in some ways, but there's more than just that, because this is also a journey of healing for you, as you've cited in your first book, Passage to Nirvana, which I may say is also one I don't want to backpedal here, but this is an amazing book, and it's more about your traumatic incident that propelled you forward into writing this book eventually. So this is, how many years ago was this?
So that book is 15 years old. There also is Peter Matthiessen in it. They necessarily overlap. They're both memoirs. I swear to God, I would never have another memoir again. It was so difficult to write. But everybody says, oh, it must be so cathartic. And I'm like, yeah. No, because if you really go deep into it, which you have to do to write a good memoir, you got to relive it. And if you're reliving traumatic events, it's not fun. But so that one, so they kind of overlap, except they just have very different focus. So the first one was really focused on how I used meditation and Zen and sailing and skiing to recover from a traumatic brain injury and what that was like. And that was before the whole thing with the NFL and football players. And so my neurologist was the one who told me I should really write it because I need to educate people about traumatic brain injuries. And then this one is more focused on Zen and what I learned from Peter, although, I guess I would do overlap there, but he was the first reader on that first book and helped me quite a bit with it. So
That's good, that's good. Well, as you know, it can take a while to write a book, especially as you mentioned, you have been a yacht captain as a profession, so you're always outdoors, which as anyone who works outdoors can know, especially on a tipsy thing called an ocean. It can be very tiring when you come home every night, and to try to write and have the discipline for that, plus the thousands of hours that you've spent with meditation as you've progressed. It's really quite remarkable to me how much you've accomplished in writing and bringing this book to light for so many people, and laymen and laywomen, if you will, the people who don't know that much about it. But reading this, it's quite addictive. If you haven't read it yet, you'll find you're going to have to carve out your time. It happens. So I want to thank you, like when you answer these simple questions, you've helped me with the who as well, Dare, the what, the non, the doko as where, itsu as when. These are not terms that I don't even know if I'm pronouncing them correctly, but I'm just guessing. That when you say how much and how many, ikura, ikutsu, one more thing about this book is it's already risen in charts. I won't tell you where those charts are, but they're on the internet, and the first name is the company. And it's gone up in these niches of Zen.
we're promoting independent bookstores.
So I'm not going to talk about it. It's the preteritio, where I don't say it. I don't use the name, as we have a problem with that. But I do want to say congratulations, because in this book being born October 2025, you just mentioned to me in passing that it's already getting a lot of recognition worldwide, and it's being consumed. And I think it's also partly because, if I may just say, the last paragraph of this book gives me this sort of chill when he says, the world also continues to devolve. Do you mind reading that?
Sure.
It's the very last paragraph of the book.
The world also continues to devolve, with bullying, hatred, and heartlessness taking over our society at the highest levels, as if the darkness is flowing up as a response to the rising of the light. That means that the things Peter Matthiessen taught are more important now than ever. Hopefully this book will bring his wisdom to a wider audience, elevating the better angels within us, moment by moment, breath by breath.
Thank you.
And I will say that the very last words, so Peter, so if you know anything about Zen, it's a very intimate pursuit. Peter and I spent many hours, just the two of us, sitting together, staring face to face, literally like this far away from each other, sitting cross-legged, discussing many things, and quite a few times he was teaching me how to teach, and when he was gone, because he knew he was, getting up there in years, he would always say to me, moment by moment, breath by breath, that is my greatest teaching. So that's why I wound on the book that way as well, because it really is very simple, very hard to do. Moment by moment, breath by breath.
And the word breath and inspiration and pneuma, an ancient Greek word, and where we get pneumonia from, it's all that word. It's all about breathing, inspiration, and exhaling, part of it. I can only say, when I read the commitment of the teachings from the different people that were in your life, I was embracing the names Dorothy and others that have the other names. But if you would like to describe some of the women teachers in addition to Peter, just introduce how it comes so importantly in this book and in your life.
Sure. So Peter, the book focuses mainly on him because he was my main teacher, my main spiritual teacher. But as he once said to me, you will have many teachers in life, and embrace them and learn from them. And one of them was my aunt, Joanna Macy. You have heard of her. She was a very bright woman, and her husband was second in command of the Peace Corps in India back in the 60s, and she had no interest in spirituality or Buddhism or anything, but she was interested in helping people, so she went up into the mountains to help the Tibetans who were streaming out of Tibet because the Chinese had invaded Tibet and they were all refugees, so she basically just went to help the refugees. And she became so amazed with these people because here they were being run out of their country, their compatriots were being murdered, their societies being, bulldozed under, and she said they were still these happy people. Like, she couldn't understand how they could be so present and so happy, so that started her studying with them. And so she became a Tibetan Buddhist. She was one of the first Western women to become a Tibetan Buddhist nun. She still raised her family. She didn't go into a monastery. And so, of course, here in Ithaca, we have the seat of the Dalai Lama, the American seat of the Dalai Lama, which is wonderful. So, Peter, one of the things I loved about Zen and Buddhism is that they usually don't try to pigeonhole you. They usually say, go learn other things from other people. Like, a lot of spiritual practices will say, like, mind's the only way, whatever. And Peter didn't do that. And so I learned a lot from her, from a female standpoint. Also, Peter's right-hand person was a woman named Dorothy who, at the Zen, she lived in Manhattan. She had been a former ballerina with one of the top companies in New York for many years, and she's still alive. She's in her 90s. And when I first started studying and went to Peter, he actually gave me her first. He said, I'm only working with senior students. You work with Dorothy and learn from her. And when you're ready, you can, if you're ready, you can work with me. So I really, and I grew up really strong now, two strong grandmothers, two sisters. So I really appreciated some of the female energy and the female teachings that I got as well. Of course, I have to, in the beginning of the book, there were two photos. There's one with me with Peter, and then the one right below is me with Joanna, my aunt. So, to me, they're equally important as far as teaching. So
that didn't escape me at all. I was looking for that role model, and because of my lack of familiarity with the structure of Zen Buddhism, I don't know how women have advanced in it for so long and have been contributing for so long in these ways. So I was very relieved when I saw that part of the book, and I think maybe that accounts for some of us who are looking for that kind of egalitarian table. So thank you for bringing that out.
I will say, Japan, especially ancient Japan, like most ancient societies, or many, most, is a very patriarchal society. So the teachings and the lineage seem to be all male, and there's a lot of male energy there, but there is a movement now to go back and re-examine that and to look at the role of nuns and women in Zen going back hundreds, if not thousands of years. And they now have a much more egalitarian role. I mean, a number of the really great American Zen teachers are women, so it's... And Peter is very supportive of that, obviously, having gone through this as a right-hand person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when I look at these tango, these words, I've kind of run out of my easy questions. And thank you, it's going to run out. We need to get someone back in here. Thank you. And I'll be asking the audience to open up some questions of theirs, because I basically enjoyed reading this week. The past week that I received it, I read it online, I highlighted the manuscript online, so I had detailed questions which won't go well with the audience unless you've read the book. So I guess it'll have to be in a book club format next time, because there are so many wonderful passages I'd like to have him read aloud and have you hear some of them. But he did say from the get-go, if I may say, he said, "Oh, you don't have to read the whole book." I was like, "I'm going to read the whole book." It was easy to do because I wanted to. And I'm pretty busy, but I just made myself, 357 pages? That's nothing, right? And then what's remarkable is he said, well, chapter 6 and 16 is all you really need. So I'll make a point of saying 6 and 16 have to do with light, not just breath, but light. And with this wonderful experience that you had, can you say the word
Kensho.
Kensho.
Yes.
Kensho. So this is where I'm going to leave it with him to describe what he wishes with this experience. So
I don't normally tell people they have to read the whole book. But I knew she was busy, so our mutual friend Scott, which you alluded to before, so Scott was actually also a student of Peter Matthiessen. Scott's a very good poet. And Scott grew up part of his childhood here in Ithaca, which is how we know each other. And so I knew Scott from Peter and Remember, and I've been looking for somebody to do this conversation, and it had taken a while because I lived here in Ithaca. And so by the time she and I connected, there wasn't a lot of time left. And so that was why I said, okay, you don't have to read the whole thing because, if you're busy, I understand. Because I didn't want her to say, no, I don't want to do this because I don't have time. So anyway, but it's very gratifying as a writer when you have people, because she's not the first one. I've had a number of other people say to me, I sat down, I was going to read it a little bit and whatever, but then I ended up, I couldn't put it down. I had one publisher, an English publisher, who did not publish the book, but it was a fan of the book, and same thing, I sent him a copy, and he's like, I'm really busy, I got a lot of things to read. I looked at it a few months, and a couple of years later, I got a note from him saying, oh my God, I still read, I couldn't put it down. And thank you so much for sending it to me. So that's a gratifying response as a writer. So I will read you just a little something from chapter 6. So chapter 6, so the book is written almost like a 2-act play. And it only covers the first 4 years of my apprenticeship with Peter. Originally I was with him for 14 years. I was going to write a book that covered the whole time I was with him. and it started to turn into War and Peace, which is not a very Zen thing, right? Zen is supposed to be spare, and I got this sprawling book, and I said, okay, wait a minute, hold on. And I realized that there was sort of a natural arc to it, and there was the first 2 years I was with him led up to this amazing, the drama sort of built to this amazing moment, and then you could stop there and take a little intermission, and then you could start over again at the lower plane, and then the second half of the book, which is the next 2 years, kind of builds up to the final denouement on the beach. So anyway, when I realized that, it was a relief. I was like, oh, okay, I don't have to wait 14 years. I can, which also leaves room for a sequel, which is nice. So anyway, so this is the end of that first half, where it leads up to this moment. And I've been studying with Peter for 2 years. And we went to another member of the Zen another woman that was a member there. We went to hear a talk by a woman named Carolyn Clark, who teaches loving kindness meditation. And she had come to Hamptons, and she was giving a public talk at a place called the Raw School, which is this very exclusive public school. And because of the exclusive public school, it's built in a very Japanese style. And there's all these beautiful like rock walls, and there's framed kimonos on the walls, and it's not your typical steel rocker high school. And so we're in this auditorium, and it's beautiful. And anyway, and towards the end of the evening, and she spoke for about 45 minutes, and then she said, "No, I'm going to teach you how to meditate. If you want, I'm going to give you the instruction, loving kindness meditation. We'll do this for like 5 or 10 minutes." And it was all great. And people that were not serious meditators who had come sat in chairs, but some of us who were very serious had brought our cushions, so we sit on the floor, and so we're sitting on the floor. She turns the lights down, and she starts giving us instruction, loving kindness meditation. And this is what happened. After only a few minutes of meditating, my perspective on the room suddenly changed, as if someone had thrown a switch in my brain. I saw the walls, chairs, and people in an entirely new, different, and startling way. Everything was energy. All colors disappeared except for an incredible golden glow that was everywhere. On people, in people, on furniture, inside furniture. The room was swimming in this luminous golden field of energy, the dark accents that still allowed some recognition of forms. The energy had life, pulsating, moving, shimmering. This was not some daydream, some imagined state, some hallucination. My eyes were riveted wide open, by fear, by awe, by a certainty that for the first time in my life, I am seeing things just as they are. Everything is magical and sparkling and wonderful. Even the rocks that make up the stone wall, the rocks that were long ago ripped from their mountain homes, tumbled down to the river, washed to the sea and worn smooth. Even the rocks are illuminated from within by this golden light. The wall in the lecture room behind Sharon is several large artworks made of small colored stones. The artwork and the entire wall are alive with dancing points of light. Even Sharon's body, while still maintaining an outline, a shape, merges into this field of energy. I become aware of every sound, every rustle, every cough and breath. This is not some fleeting glimpse. This way of seeing the world is solid, unchanging. For many minutes, exactly how long I cannot tell, I sit riveted in my cushion. Time has ceased to have meaning. I do not know intellectually what I'm seeing. It is unfathomable, but at the same time I know intuitively deep down what I'm seeing. I am not frightened, but I am frightened. I am open and in awe and totally aware of every person around me with luminous outlines of energy. There's also a slightly disturbing aspect, something that I've never read about around my readings on Zen, spiritual openings, and the absolute. Not only do I see the luminous light, the connectedness of all things, but I also see the darkness. I literally see, even inside Sharon Salisbury, this calm, meditative, gentle person, the capacity for anger and violence. I can see pain and suffering deep inside of her. It is not the major part of her being. The majority of her is light. where I can see a dark spot in the middle of her torso surrounded by her light. I see the dark spot and the light, the shimmering energy of Sharon Salzberg, move and shift and flow as she shifts around to look at her wristwatch, presumably checking to see how much longer she should let the group meditate. The yin and yang, the light and dark, the duality of human nature. I don't just feel it, I see it. And that's one manifestation that they call Kensho, which is some sort of spiritual opening. Kensho is the Japanese word for it. That's it.
Well, thank you. I think if I asked him to read from chapter 16, it would give away too much of the book, so I'll have to say no. But thank you for reading that, and the cadence of his words, the description, the succinct and yet drawn out analysis of what's happening is always remarkable to me. I'm someone who loves to read poetry of any period of time and looking for like the secrets of the world in mythology. But when I read your book, I felt like I was able to hold on to the cadences and prose didn't bother me. So I was like, yes, I can read prose still. This is good. So anyway, thank you, because as we're going through, and I know people online and streaming, which I thought the word streaming has a different meaning here. You speak of the Tibetan exodus of streaming, and here we have people listening and gathering. And lately I've just been thinking about your connections with analog radio and connections between people in terms of spirituality. And there's a lot of people who are more worried about everything and perhaps looking for an interconnectedness that's not just on the internet, but in a spiritual sense. And so I thank you for bringing up so many of these sort of these topics that are so relevant today. But if you will, I'd like to say relevant questions from the people here would be wonderful.
Sure.
Ava.
I see two other texts, and you can either explain why you wouldn't want to read them or read them.
The book was just published, and I've been doing readings and sort of a small book tour, and in some places, it's been different. It's been more that I've been giving a reading, more traditional reading. So it's not that I don't want to read these books, it's just that in some other places I've been, it hasn't been a conversation, it's just been me reading, so I needed more to read.
You're welcome to, if that's what you'd like.
Yeah, so that's, and some of what's here, I've covered. I will read to you, but people ask me where the title comes from. So the title, like all ancient manuscripts, we have no idea how true they really are, right? I mean, and especially ancient Buddhist manuscripts, because when the Buddha was alive, they didn't have written language in the way that some of the Judeo-Christian people had. And what they did write, they wrote on palm fronds, which disappeared. So there's very much an oral storytelling tradition like there is in many ancient traditions around the world. And so the Buddha's original words were handed down orally over hundreds and hundreds of years until they finally wrote it down. And so that's why I say we don't really know what he said, but this is supposedly from one of the first sutras, which are like books of the Bible, sort of. And this is supposedly something that the Buddha said. Let not a person run back to the past, or on the future build their hopes. For the past has been left behind, and the future has not been reached. Instead, with insight, let them see each present moment. It is this person who has had a single excellent night. So that's where it comes from. It also somehow relates to that scene that I just read you from the law school. Yes, I will. So I won't read you the last part. It's not even marked here, but just will tell you that was after only 2 years, but it was pretty amazing, and it led to some other even more amazing things, which is the book ends unreadable. So yeah, and the rest of it, like another part that's marked is really just the prologue, the beginning that explains, which I would explain to some of you, like who Peter was and that sort of thing. So. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I'm quite familiar with Peter Matthiessen and also with Zen. So what is his lineage?
So he started, and there's a lot about in The Snow Leopard, which Carolyn mentioned, which was his probably his most famous book, which won the National Book Award in the 70s. I think it was 75, I think. And he began studying because he was a traveler. He traveled all over the world. And this is, of course, before cell phones and before communication. So he would disappear from his wife for like 6 months at a time from his home. And the New Yorker would send him to write about tribes in New Guinea and South America. And he would come home after 6 months, and the two of them, having not seen each other for 6 months, would sort of, dance around each other and have to get reacquainted. And one day he came home, and standing in his driveway in the Hamptons were 3 little Japanese Zen monks. Because while he was gone, his wife was, she was a very big one. She was a bit of a secret like he was, and she had sort of found these Japanese monks that had come to New York and would teach him, and she'd gotten into Zen. And he was like, who are these strange guys in black robes in my driveway, right? So they were primarily from the Rinzai tradition, which if you know about Zen, like there's the Rinzai and the Zodo. And so, and they were from like the Yasutani Roshi tradition. Anyway, and he also, if you haven't read it, he wrote another book which did not get as much play, but it delves more deeply into his Zen studies, which is called Man-Headed Driving River. And you can read about his path and who he followed. And so he started studying in New York, and he started studying with Edo Shimano Roshi in New York at the New York Zen Center. He was instrumental. This is the 50th anniversary this year of still the only purpose-built Japanese Zen monastery in the U.S., which is up in the Catskills. They were other monasteries, but they were like people that took over abandoned, Catholic monasteries. This one was actually a Dharma craftsman from Japan and everything built this. And it was actually the Western, Central New York connection because it was through the generosity of Chester Carlson who invented Xerox, who was from Rochester. And he and his wife got into Zen, and they donated the money to build this monastery. Anyway, Peter left Edo Shimano Roshi under circumstances that he never really wanted to talk about much, but I can tell you because years later it was revealed that he was a bit of a sexual predator, and he was preying on so many women in his settlement. And he's not been sort of disclosed, although he did, help build this monastery and help bring them in the U.S. So Peter left him, and we talked about it, but even talking about it, he didn't want to talk about it. But I knew from what he was talking about that it had to do with that. He was not happy with the way things were going on there. So he left and he went out to California, and he studied under a different teacher there. He was more of a Soto Zen teacher, and Soto, for those who don't know, is considered one of the kinder, gentler Zen, whereas Rinzai is the stricter, more militaristic on Zen. Which was Maizumi Roshi, which is out of the Los Angeles Zen Center. And I would say Maizumi was his main teacher. And Maizumi ordained Bernie Glassman Roshi, and Bernie Glassman Roshi, and ordained Peter, and so that's the lineage, pretty much.
Yeah, so are you going to teach in that lineage?
So Peter and I, yes and no. He wanted me to teach, and if you read the book, you'll see that, some things happened with me what gave me insight that most people, even most ordained teachers, don't have. A lot of ordained teachers don't have. And I was able to gain some pretty amazing insight. And having Peter as a teacher, and I studied with a number of different people, as I alluded to before, and he was really probably the most amazing teacher. His depth of knowledge was amazing. But he, I didn't feel I was ready yet. He felt I was ready, but I didn't feel I was ready. Plus, I was I was probably locked up in something like a well a lot. You can teach like I'm doing now, and I teach with a book, but to teach staying in one place was harder for me. I was moving around a lot. As well as the fact that right as we're having this discussion was when he got leukemia, and so he had to concentrate on that. I had to concentrate. We didn't he did not ordain me. So the question becomes, if you teach, how important is it that you've been ordained by somebody, and or are you like the Buddha who just had a realization and knew what he knew and started teaching? Nobody ordained the Buddha. So I think, yes, part of this publishing this book is trying to bring, there's some, if you're in design, there's some more esoteric things in this book too. I tried to write this for a wider audience, so it's not a Zen book specifically, but it is a Zen book. And there are certain things in there about suffering and the truth of suffering and some of those sort of major tenets of Buddhism that are important and maybe somewhat controversial to some teachers, frankly, the way that I describe it. So, so to be continued. Yes, ma'am.
I know like this much about Zen. So my question relates to where you end the book and talking about current times, modern times, and applying your practice in managing the world now and your experience of the world now and staying in the moment. Could you say a little bit more about that, like how that is for you in your practice?
So again, that's something that could be further controversial. There are many Zen people and Zen teachers who think we shouldn't judge, we should just sit and meditate, and things will work themselves out of being where they are. I partly subscribe to that, but I also subscribe to Joanna's vision, which was, Joanna was very big on what's called the Shambhala warrior, which is an ancient myth from Tibetan culture, which is that there will come a time when the forces of evil become so dominant that those of us who are the forces of good must rise up and fight them. It's almost like a Star Wars kind of mythology, Yeah, but the difference is that the tools that the Shambhala warrior uses are compassion and love and understanding. And the Shambhala warrior doesn't pick up a sword or a lightsaber or whatever. So I do subscribe to it. I think that we, going back, most of us are remember like, Vietnam and the Band Brothers and things like that. I think that spiritual leaders do have a responsibility to stand up and say, this is right and this is wrong, or this is, this is dark or this is light or whatever, and that, and to approach it with compassion and love, and to look at what hurts people and what doesn't hurt people, and that sort of thing. And again, that's, not a view held by spiritual teachers, especially Zen teachers. It is something that is somewhat, can be controversial anyway.
Who did your cover?
So I get a lot of compliments on this cover. So I have a cover artist that did this. She just did a really nice job. And I used to be in journalism in New York as a magazine editor, and then I was also in marketing in New York. And so I've dealt with a lot of graphic artists. And I can tell you that a lot of them have a mind of their own. I don't want to listen to you. They just say, this is what this is, the way it should be, and then you try to tell them what to do. And I'm used to that. I've dealt with that. And I said to her, I gave her a synopsis of the book, and I said to her, and I had even done like a little mock-up of my own that had a door on it, because the Zumbo door was the big old horse barn. It was this beautiful old wooden door with like a rope handle, and it just, I don't know, and it was in this stucco sort of wall, and when you went through that door, you went in a different world. And I wanted that sense. I said, well, I want that sense, on the cover. And so the name of Peter Zumbo, what he named it, was the Ocean Zumbo. Partly because Zen masters often use the ocean as an illusion for mind and universe. And also, it just so happened that his property was about a half mile from the Atlantic Ocean, and there were waves crashing on the beach. When you meditated, it was beautiful. It was so quiet, you could hear the waves like crashing on the beach sometimes. So she took all of that and, put some water on and put the sky on. And I'm a big fan of Magritte, if you know, the surrealist painter. And I sent her that famous Magritte painting, where it's like the night sky with the house down below, and so it's like both daylight and night at the same time. And I said, and I sent her some Van Gogh paintings like Starry Night, and I said, and so she took all that in and came up with this really nice cover. And this is about the 6th or 7th, because she'd sent it to me and I'd say, I like this, but what about this? And it was a nice collaborative, so I've got a lot of compliments on it.
Yeah, follow-up question.
Yes.
What is not in the book?
What is not in the book?
Wow. Emptiness of what is not in the book that you were not able to.
So what's not in the book is obviously what comes after, because there is more to come. What's also not in the book is a lot of examination of the Sangha, which is the group of people that were there with me. There is mention of them, and there are some, there are characters in the book, but in Buddhism, there's lots of 3s of this and 10s of that and 15s of this and it's 8s of this, right? And thankfully, Zen doesn't really know how to lap. Zen is more just like pairs all that away. But there is something called the 3 jewels, and the 3 jewels is the Sangha, which is like the congregation, the teachings of the Buddha, and the teacher. And so there's a lot here about the teacher. There's a lot in here, because Peter's the teacher, and the other teachers like Joanna and Dorothy and some other people. There's a lot in here about some Zen teachings about suffering and other things. But if there's anything that, would be a whole different book in itself, is the Sangha and the personal relations in the Sangha. And, it's not all like beautiful white rainbows and unicorns, it's like any other group. There can be, stuff that goes on and whatever. So some of that is probably that's mostly it. And I will say, when I wrote my first book, this is sort of an interesting news story anyway. So when I wrote Passage to Nirvana, I was going through a really bad divorce, which is one of the things that drove me into Peter's arms, so to speak. And my ex-wife, who had been in him for a while, married her, and still has many fine qualities, but she had gotten into a little dark place and was taking it on in a big way. And Peter knew this because he and I, he's my teacher, we were very close. And when I wrote the first draft of this book, he said, your wife's not here. And I said, yeah, I know. And he said, well, but it doesn't make sense without her. Some things that happen and, some choices you make. And I said, yeah, but I'm not trying to bash her or drive her through the mud, or that's not, I just, no matter what she's done, I'm not going there. And he's like, as a writer, you have to go there. And he said, you cannot judge what will happen. Like you cannot, I said, but you've been teaching me compassion. You've been teaching me to have compassion. And he said, sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is to, hold up a mirror to somebody, and maybe they'll learn from it, maybe they won't, And sometimes the most compassionate, in Zen, don't do this anymore, thank God, but in some of the older stories, masters will really like slapping students across the face, and like wake up, it's like, wake up. And so he said both as a Zen student and also as a writer, he said as a writer, just doesn't hold together. Like you gotta tell the truth and not be attached to the outcome. So that was things that were in the first book when I first wrote it, but then ended up in the book, and but still we're not. I mean, I could have put a lot worse things in. I'm still totally fine with that. And myself too. I mean, I made sure that I examined, which was the right side of the road. The things that I was not being a good person at and things like that. So yeah, it's hard stuff. My next book is going to be fiction. Gonna make it out. And especially I would say when you write, after the first book, I sort of never wrote my melodrama, as I said before, because it's so hard to do, and it drives up all this stuff. And then, of course, I wrote another one, and this one is even worse, because when you're writing about somebody as famous as Peter Matthiessen, you cannot get anything wrong, right? Like everything has to be right. You get one thing wrong, and everything else in the book is subject. People are like, no, not that wrong. What about this? What about this? What about this? So fortunately, being a former journalist, I had a lot of notes. I had a lot of handwritten notes. I had a lot of audio notes that I took after meetings with Peter. And then I had to do a lot of research to make sure some of the other aspects of his life I got right. And it was not easy. So.
Well, we've come full circle in the hour of the analog clock, which is over there on the wall at Buffalo Street. And I can only say I'm very satisfied with the Q&A coming from you, and I'm sure there'll be more questions. We don't have a chat going. This is not a Zoom call, but I'm sure there'll be plenty of people in discussion with you as time goes on, and we thank you for that.
I will say a couple of quick things. First of all, again, thanks to Buffalo Street Books. It's really wonderful. Support independent bookstores as much as you can. And also, I have a website, leecross.life. And my email is on there if anybody wants to get in touch with me. Also on Facebook, all that stuff. And I welcome conversations with readers, so if anyone wants to reach out or has any questions, feel free. And Carolyn mentioned book clubs before. If any of you are in book clubs or want to, or if you're a teacher, my real goal would be to get this into the hands of college students and people like that as well, because I think it would bring up a lot of really great discussion and thought in the younger generation. There is a 5-page, 22-question book club discussion study, classroom study guide, which I have, which you can download from my website. I can send it to you. So there's lots of resources to go with the book. Is hopefully a learning experience and teaching related.
Great. Good to know. That's great, because I know several of us are teachers or former or present professors here tonight in Ithaca with bent toward teaching, and students would really appreciate this kind of honesty and humility in this book. So I appreciate, even though you have a memoir, the I person, letter I, capital, everywhere you go, it doesn't feel egotistical. It has a real sense of progression and humility and a teaching compassion.
It's hard to write a memoir and you're a Zen student at the same time, because Zen is like trying to get rid of ego and get rid of I. And I'm going through writing about it, and I'm like, oh God, take that out. So that's hard to do, and it's a fine line. I also will say, I don't know if any of you remember, but when I was a freshman in college, they would give you like your freshman reading assignment over the summer and stuff. And of course, one of the books when I was a freshman in college was Zen and World of Motorcycle Amendments, which Peter hated, but and I enjoyed reading it. I go back and read. I reread it the other day for the 50th anniversary edition a couple of years ago, whatever. And Yeah, purely because it's like nothing about Zen. I mean, it's like it's in the title, but it's not really much about Zen. But anyway, it's but that idea of like getting young people to think and giving them books that make them think and having discussions is, I think, a good thing. So, well, thank you all for coming. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. It was great. So.
And thank you for the live streaming. And I know we're going to stream out to the little bit of dusk. There's no light out there here on the East Coast, and it's a sunny day. So thank you for being here, despite how sunny it was outside. We should.
Yeah, absolutely. So.
Yeah. Thank you.
Really wonderful. I just want to thank you so much. Just a week ago, 3 days ago, I learned about this, and so I didn't have time to read the book yet, but the idea of getting it into the hands of college students really appeals to me. I just retired from Cornell a few months ago. I'm still emeritus, so I'm still very active. A lot of agriculture and natural resource management, but I'm also a social scientist. When I was at that very formative stage in my undergraduate career, I started reading Peter Matthiessen and the Snow Leopard and all that. He influenced my whole career, big time. I worked internationally for a lot, doing kind of, I don't need to tell you about me, but I am really excited about the fact that you've got teaching notes and that, there's actually resources, because I would love to bring together a group that potentially can influence the way I was influenced by that.
And I can offer discounts on orders for classes and stuff like that too. And also, I'm from Buffalo, although I'm not always there. But if you did have a group and wanted me to speak to your group, or especially get a bunch of kids together, or whatever, in a classroom setting, I'm happy to I'm used to driving all over the world in a boat and a car, whatever. So I drove 2.5 hours there. It was like to drive down the street to the corner store. So I'm happy. So I'd be happy to.
My name's Louise, and I'll definitely email you.
I have someone.
Really excited about this. It's just really.
Would you like to pass it on?
Oh, great. No, that's whatever. So that's fine. So, so you can what's your name?
Louise Buck. Department of Natural Resources and Environment.
So my friend Brad, he's in ag school somehow.
Okay.
But he was my best friend growing up, so that's but he used to research he was doing the sewage sludge research up on the hillside outside of Cornell and stuff like that, so so well, nice to meet you. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm just going to have to revoke it.
Please do.
I appreciate what you said about writing this book and not initially writing about your life. And I'm also divorced, and my husband works in the and his really true, movie memoirs that don't at all. And it's actually kind of shocking. I have a very good relationship with him, that I do have a good relationship, able to share the joys and concerns of our two grown kids. And I have been writing pieces of memoir, and thinking the same thing. I'm not going to just trash him. And I think that I gave a talk several years ago to this whole National Association for these pediatric ophthalmologists, because one of the sons and they told me the title was How I Raised My Sons to Be Rockstars. Families Journey Through Rebirth and Gender. So they gave me that title, and the whole background. And then I think that it was the process of not showing up and being there. I didn't have to go into detail. But anyway.
Sometimes if you just sort of blow out the people that and I was very careful too. I was like, well, I think the problem is when people write that stuff and they make themselves blameless. I made sure that I also, made myself not be in the best light. Because it was true, because I wasn't, worth anything. So I think if you're honest that way and show, that there's two people that for whatever reason are just not meshing, and, that's all you can do. So.
But I'm very aware of Joanna Macy and her death recently. She was an amazing person. I worked for 13 years with a named Brother David Steindl, who was friends with her, and knew a lot of other stuff. That's how I was introduced to him. So I'm really sorry for your loss, but I'm so happy for you to be here.
Yeah, she was amazing woman. We were just family. I went to a number of her retreats and learned from her, and so it was cool.
So your journey, though, was more than 14 years. But it just, after you accidentally, whatever happened to you, which I would find out in that book, that's when it really deepened and you really dove into it.
It really deepened when my wife and I really started to have trouble because I had started studying, I tried to start studying, I was living in New York and I was in England, but she was raised Catholic and had a really healthy distrust of organized religion, and she was not happy with the fact that I was starting to get interested in it, and so I kind of I just had to, tie it up in a bow in a box and put it up on the shelf, but when she and I started really having, serious difficulties, I knew I needed something to ground me in that past, but really, yeah.
Okay, let me break it.
Feel about signing.
Oh, I would love to.
I've never heard of it. No, really? Where do you work, Brad? Where's that? Across from UTI. I wonder who was that.